No, like it's a rule.
Today is an ASF.
We just really love you so
version
much.
of Tequila in your tea. Sorry. Yeah, I needed to ruin Lyndä's day. She literally hates this. So if I can start off a podcast episode doing that,
I just made adjustments, so we're not actually starting the podcast that way. Thank you.
depressing. I'm gonna do it again. Thanks.
No,
Yes.
that.
It's not an edit. Like
It is. It's gonna be like ruining my life. People are gonna listen to it. They're like, "What the heck? Who passed this?"
It's going to be really intriguing for them. They're going to want to stay and listen for more. Because
Yes.
they're like, why?
Whatever.
It's going to trigger a lot of people into thinking it's an ASMR episode. And then they're like, not what I signed up for.
It's more just a chaotic episode. So that was the vibe for me. Like you start with just a little bit of chaos, you know, just a little bit. She's like, I don't want to edit that.
I hate it.
Did you hear it in the headphones though? Like the little clink? The best part. Oh God. Look at her. She looks so
unhappy.
upset. Okay, fine.
Okay.
I'll just.
Here we go.
I won't do it.
Y'all are making your podcast episode shorter by just talking about other stuff. So.
You could keep all of this in.
Cool.
Because I was going to keep it in about like it ruining your day and then going to like normal stuff. But
We're
then
keeping all of this. Let's keep going.
okay, great.
I love this.
So anyway, welcome back to Tequila and Your Tea. If this is your first time joining us, my name is Veena Kenoah. I have decided to go on this insane journey with the Lyndä Miller, who, of course, I just completely messed up her day today. Just a little bit of chaos, ASMR. But I know that I could only pull that off with the wonderful Grace Taraborrelli.
Wow.
She is not only a really fun person, an amazing person, but she's someone like we could hang out with kind of semi-regularly.
Yeah.
We could always hang out more. That's the
We could.
vibe. So I'm just really glad that you're here.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm really glad that you're here for this topic, too. Today's episode is called Your Boss Sucks. We're here just for a little bit of fun, a little bit of chaos, and a little bit of venting. I know that unless you're new to the workforce, at some point in your life, you have worked for someone who made you question all of reality to why and how did that person get to this position of leadership? And how are they dictating your life? So yeah, we're going to dig into that a little bit. Both of us here have quite a bit of experience at this point, you know, not enough to be put out to pasture, but just enough to be relevant, still in the workforce, but definitely seasoned. I'll say seasoned. Grace, of course, she works as an executive assistant at a church.
Yep.
Don't let that fool you. That's a lot of work. a lot of work. But you've also spent 12 years in the theater industry, which also a lot of work. People make it look pretty, but they are sweating behind those scenes, I promise you. And just knowing that you are willing to bring some of those experiences here, not only from the perspective of the workforce, but the entertainment workforce or the art workforce, even in a church setting, all you're doing is a lot of presentation. Yeah. And so, of course, there's a lot more that goes into that, but it's a job that I don't take lightly. So, thanks for sharing in advance.
Can't wait to share.
Oh, good. Of course, I'm almost hesitant to share, even though I started this myself.
Yeah, it's your idea.
Yeah, exactly. I can only blame me. But I'm a little hesitant, specifically because I've worked in HR for 9 years, and it brings a slightly different perspective of working for some of these people directly, but then also working for them indirectly. And trying to work with them on some of their weak points. And how that goes. So anyway, let's just dig into it.
Yeah.
I guess, tell me a little bit about your work history, just kind of what you've done, the fun things, the bad things. And I guess along the way, you've had at least one supervisor, employer that kind of made you look at life a little bit differently.
Absolutely.
What was that like for you?
Yeah. Okay, so I probably started working in high school.
Okay.
For theater.
Young work life.
Yeah.
I was about
young
that.
Work life. Not counting like the babysitting I did, if we're gonna count that. Was a great babysitter. But like first job was high school for our theater. So I joined the tech crew, production crew club when I was a freshman, and then once you did like so many hours and got trained and stuff, the school district would hire you because we would rent out our theater to like outside things, and they needed somebody there to like do lights, sound, be just there to help. And so we got hired. I got hired like halfway through my freshman year. So that was my first job, and that propelled me into the arts industry and the theater industry. And so did that all through high school, went to college for theater production, got a BFA in production with a concentration in stage management.
And educated.
That BFA. Did that and worked just basically at theaters. I would go away for the summer and did summer stocks and summer theaters. And then I graduated college and started working here in Philly at the Walnut Street Theater in their ticketing office and in their kid shows. And then, yeah, that's what I did. I worked for the Philly Pops Orchestra prior to getting this job at church. So we've been in the arts industry for a while. And it's been a wonderful time and a horrible time. I've had many of bad bosses that I've personally interacted with, and many of like the bad bosses of like, you're like the high up and like what you do trickles down to like everybody. So like I've had not immediate bosses that were like bad, but like the people above them that like it then like trickles through and makes really good people turn into not great bosses. Yeah. Which is sad because like it's not always their fault because they're dealing with the bad boss that's above them. And I've had quite a number of those. So yeah.
Funny enough, I've become acquainted with a lot more people who have done their career track in the art spaces. I've always been in the art spaces. First job actually was getting paid to sing on a choir.
Oh, cool.
It was cool.
Yeah. That's great.
Like, we just went touring all over the place, singing these choirs. And I think one time the choir was recording like vocals with an orchestra for a film or something. It was
sounds amazing.
The coolest summer job of my entire life. And I looped all of my friends in. Like, I have this job. They need like 30 more voices. Show up. And they're
amazing.
like, well, I don't really sing them. It's a choir. Shut up.
It doesn't matter.
But yeah, work history has definitely been kind of to avoid the art spaces just because, when you have parents that are like, I'm glad that you like the arts. But that is not a job.
It won't sustain you.
Yes, like that's not a job. Yeah, I've made pivots. But I've always kept in touch with people who stayed in the art spaces and worked through them.
Yeah.
And notoriously, they've had some of the most interesting stories. I'm like, is that what? Huh? And my brief tenure in some of those spaces was always very like,
what's happening?
Do you realize that's illegal?
Yeah.
Like, you just get away with it here because no one's tracking things.
Nope.
And there's no records.
Yep.
So you just
fine.
do it. Great.
It's
cool.
fine.
Love. But I can see how your stories are going to be pretty interesting, pretty fun. So anyway, tell me about, I guess, the first time you really had to interact with someone who obviously was supposed to be leading you and guiding you. You want to follow through the trenches, but then like wake up call moment. Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah. So I guess the first one that I like actually realized that it was like a bad situation, because I feel like I've been in situations where like I didn't think it was as bad, or like that the boss, I was just like, oh, this is just how it is. So I think like the first time that I was like, oh no, like you're really bad at being my manager right now, and my boss was, I was I think it was in between my junior and senior year of college. I had stayed in Pittsburgh for the summer, and I was working for this theater that did site-specific shows. And so they would find places all over Pittsburgh, and we would put on a show there. And so I went in for an interview for an internship. That was the production internship, so it was a little vague in what I was going to be doing. And I was like, that's kind of like a little normal sometimes, where you like go in production can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different theaters and a lot of different places. So it's like I have a general idea. My mentor knew the person that I was interviewing with, really liked him, and I was like, okay, like I trust my mentor. I'm gonna go do this. And I did. It was a great interview. He made it sound like it was gonna be like a job that I was gonna get to use my management skills, but also gain new skills because I was gonna do a little bit more labor work, which I was fine with. And so the show was in this big open parking lot that had a cover over it. It was basically like a parking lot where like you keep extra cars. And so we did a lot of manual labor, which was fine. But then it was like, he didn't know how to manage us. So it was like, okay, you're going to come in, you know, at this time, and we're going to stay, like, we're going to come in at 8, and then we're going to stay really late into the night. Or like, can you come, he asked us to like come in a month earlier than our start date. And like, you're already paying us pennies. And then he was like, we really need you guys to come in and help, like do some pre-stuff, like some pre-production stuff and build some stuff. And so we went in, me and the other intern went in like a month earlier without getting paid. And like, didn't realize halfway through, we were like, I don't like what? But like, we were like almost guilt tripped it into doing it because it was a small theater company and it was a site specific show and they needed the help. And it was like, okay, like I want to do this because I want to like make it in the theater world. And a lot of times you need to know people and you don't want to do a bad impression. And so we went in and we did all this extra work. And then I was asked to join the like actual production as the assistant stage manager. And the first thing that came to his mind was like, okay, but you're still going to come in and do all of this like work of building the set, and then you'll go to rehearsal at night. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, I can't, like, that's a lot of work. And I was already doing another job. I had a second job that summer. And he just like didn't know how to manage the fact that like you're asking me to do 2 jobs. You've never had an intern before. You don't know what you're doing. You've never been in your position. Like, he was the production director. He didn't know what he was doing. And it was just a horrible situation. And it was the first time that I was like, this sucks and you suck. And I don't want to do this anymore. And I don't want to be here anymore. And yeah, so that was like my first time really realizing that like sometimes people just aren't good at managing and aren't good at being a boss.
It's so interesting because just even somewhat recently spending enough time with theater professionals, I wish I could say that that was an outlier story.
Yeah.
Like, like almost every single person I know that works for every or any theater has a very similar story. And unfortunately, for me, because I'm personally sad about this, in a lot of the art spaces that I absolutely love, the culture is so toxic that people feel like they can't stay, or if they are staying, they're staying to their detriment. Like, you're going to die in this space because you work 60 to 80-hour work weeks but cannot pay your rent. Yeah. You are doing jobs that are outside of your wheelhouse because you're flexible, but there's no appreciation for it, or it's very much like, well, I, as your boss, can make up hours, can decide what your job role is today, when in a lot of other employment spaces, that would never fly. Like, no, you have a job description for a reason. Like, if I help slightly outside of that, that's one thing. But to completely make up someone's job any day that they show up, like, it's insane.
It's insane, yeah.
So it's one of the things that, like, I wish I could cure, but well above my pay grade.
Absolutely. Same. Yeah, it's a hard industry to be in. And it's a lot of also like, it's always been like this. And we're all working really hard. So you have to work really hard. Or we're all here from 8 to 8 every day. And so like, it's not just you. And it's just like, okay, well, just because you did it in the past does not mean it's correct. It wasn't correct then. It's not correct now. And it's a hard industry that you're just constantly overworked. And I get why people leave. I get why I left that industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially after 12 years and you're not seeing change.
Yeah.
Or you're not working for people who choose to respect you as a human, which I guess kind of leads into just the era that we're in now.
Yeah.
I like to consider it the post-pandemic era of the workforce, whether it's in art spaces and not in art spaces. I think the art industry is having a hard time catching on, but other industries are feeling it a lot. That my generation, the millennial generation, and then leading into your generation and past that is starting to say, like, let's backtrack here.
Yeah.
You aren't taking care of me. We're dying in droves. I need to make sure that my life is taken care of. But I still want to work for you and do a pretty good job here. So we need to shift things. And it just leads into a conversations everyone's having. Like Google's having conversations about, you know, work from home or work-life balance and why that's such a threatening thing to say because people want to know that their life matches their work. Yeah. Not that they want to take more time off. It's just, am I going to be fulfilled in both spaces? Yeah. Or do I give everything I have to a space that doesn't take care of me later and then have no life? Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe talk about what that experience was like for you, because I can talk about what it was like for me, but it's just going to be slightly different in general because I actually worked a lot through the pandemic and still not for great bosses. Yeah. But I found it to be really weird for me at a spot because at the time I was still very much in HR, and there's this line of toe the company line and the company mission statements and all that kind of stuff, but also hear the employee and then make safe spaces for them. Yeah. But when you are working with people in leadership who also don't care about those safe spaces that you're supposed to create, it's like, how do I make sure that these people are being taken care of during a global pandemic when healthcare is changing and we don't provide that much healthcare? Yeah. Or when what people need in order to survive hours-wise, or oh, well, they could get sick in this space. We don't really have a precedent for this. How do we make those changes? Yeah. And some people just didn't care to try. Yeah. And it's like, I don't know. It was definitely a hard place to be in. Yeah. As someone who finds myself naturally an advocate. It was very hard place to be in, to say that's like, okay, great, I get that they need to show up for work, but 2 of their relatives are in the hospital, plus they might get somebody sick, and we also don't want to provide masks because it's weird, or we're going to require masks, but we're not going to have them on site. Like, what's the it? Yeah. And companies didn't know what to do. No.
Wild time.
It was crazy. Wild. But I'm seeing some of the changes afterwards. I'm seeing some of them being taken back. I guess, like, for you, did you feel like the pandemic affected you where you were, your industry, how you showed up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think the pandemic definitely hit our industry. I was working in March of 2020. I was working on a kids show at the Walnut. We were in the middle of rehearsals, and then it was like one day it was just like, just kidding, we're gonna shut down for the 2 weeks. So like our show wasn't actually gonna get to be put on, which is sad to like watch specifically for me to like watch the actors pour so much into this show. And like kid shows are really hard to do because like sometimes they're like a little dumb. They're not like the most in-depth thing to do. Like they're like, it's just like a fun show.
It's a kid show.
Yeah, it's a kid show. But like the actors that were in were pouring so much into it because they loved it and they wanted to like provide theater for these kids and for the schools that were going to come see the show. And then for one day for it to just be like gone and us have no idea when it was going to come back was scary and was a little like, okay, but like what do I do? Because at first it was like, you know, lockdown for 2 weeks, and I was like, okay, no, it's going to get extended. And then all of a sudden we were in this quarantine. And it was like everybody else was like, we're going to come back eventually. And the theater world was like, we don't know. And it was the last thing on everybody's mind. It was the last thing on the government's mind. It was like it felt like nobody really cared.
It's true. There was a lot of
Yeah.
campaigns about like save the restaurants or all this kind of stuff. But
nobody was like, bring theaters back or bring the arts back. And there was one, I think it was like one of the aid packages that we forgot, like didn't include like IATSE workers, I think it was, that would like, and I remember just like IATSE coming out with a petition that you could sign because they didn't include arts workers, specifically like crew workers on TV shows and movies and on Broadway. They were like, didn't get anything. I had friends who worked in the theater industry who never really got unemployment because they didn't always count. Like being a contract worker in theater didn't always count for unemployment. So I had friends who went months without that extra, without unemployment in general, and without that extra $600 that we were getting, which was insane. So I think it definitely like it affected us because we were like, when do we get to come back? What are we gonna do when we come back? Because like theater seats are not spread out, nor are they like spacious. So it was like, what do we do? And a lot of theaters work off of their ticket sales. And so if you're selling less tickets because people have to be like spread out, you can't do as much. Yeah. And who's going to want to come back? Like what subscribers or what audience is going to want to come back in the middle of a pandemic or towards the end of a pandemic? And so it was scary. And it was like this moment of like did I just like lose everything? Like my whole career? Was it just gone? And like, I had lost all my work. Like I was working contract to contract. And so like, I was like, okay, crap. Like I just lost the show that I was doing. I lost my summer job where I was going to go out of state and work at a theater. And then I lost the contracts that were promised to me in the fall. And it was just like, okay, well, this is scary. And what do I do? I didn't know what to do with myself because I was like, I don't know a world outside of theater, nor at the time did I want to work in a world outside of theater. So I didn't even know like really kind of who I was outside of this work or what I wanted to do. And so it was like scary to be losing my industry and then also be scary to be like, okay, well, what do I do to survive now? Because I can't like just not work for ever. Like it wasn't good. Like unemployment was going to run out. The aid was going to stop coming. And if theaters never came back, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so it was like, it was a crazy time. It was a wild time. And
it's absolutely traumatic.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
It's crazy because I know when COVID hit, I remember I was home and I was on unemployment because at the time I was working for a concert facility. And so concerts,
also stopped.
Yeah. At the same time, I was working for technically the HR department, working administratively. So I had unemployment for the winter, which is what we usually did. We were fired and on unemployment and then to come back at a certain point. And of course, they're just like, oh, yeah, we're going to have a season. Oh, it's only going to be a few weeks back. Oh, it's only going to be like a month delayed. And then it was just like, that was it.
Yeah.
And I remember for me in particular, there was very little communication that I got.
Oh, yes.
And I was like, oh, okay, but I know other people who work there. Let me get the communication from them. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
But when we realized like, oh, snap. Oh, we're done.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was like, okay, well, that sucks, but who's hiring in HR? And let me like figure that out.
Yeah.
But I was also aware that I was like, what's going to happen to all the bartenders? What's going to happen to like all of these people that I worked with that I really enjoy? Where do I squeeze them?
Yeah.
And I feel like I know a lot of HR professionals are this way, but it's like in our DNA to plug people in holes.
Yeah.
And so to find that you now have hundreds of thousands of people without any sort of employment and then there's no spaces to put them.
Yeah, not enough holes.
It's like, where's your transitional skill? And I think that's what's hitting the art industry so hard. There's so many people that pour their life into just like that one skill that they know and they excel at. And then when you have something as traumatic as a pandemic or mass firings, now all of a sudden it's like but no one told me
Yeah.
I was going to need a transitional skill.
Yeah.
Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
I do this. I've
There's
excelled
that.
at this. I've succeeded at this, and now it's gone.
Yeah.
It's a crazy thought. It's a crazy thought, and trying to reconcile my feelings at the time about it while also just like, but I guess I still gotta pay my bills.
Yeah.
Because unemployment didn't renew. I had already had 6 months of unemployment. So it's like, great, but that was for the winter, not for COVID.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's like, all right. So I found myself in the retail industry, and they still needed HR because they weren't closing. They're like, people still gonna shop.
Well, they're gonna online shop, and we gotta fill those orders.
It wasn't even online shopping. I wish it was.
Was it in person?
It was in person.
Wow.
It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. And half the nightmare was because it was unprecedented, but then the other half is because think about the companies that would not only just remain open, but like, well, we're still gonna do our processes our way.
Yeah.
Not really want to pivot. Those are the types of companies that usually don't necessarily prioritize their people.
Yeah.
And there were lots of situations that needed to be cleaned up. There were lots of situations where I was like, okay, let me try and help ease the pressure in certain spaces. But that's where it kind of leans into what you were saying earlier about like that top-down leadership. That if the person up here is not doing so hot and they put pressure on this person and this person and this person,
keeps going down.
It just gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
So obviously you shifted from one space to another. What do you think is a lesson that you took either from the whole experience, or I guess for me, working for different bad bosses came with a lot of different lessons.
Yeah.
I think my first major lesson was to respect myself a little bit more, and not in the abrasive way that unfortunately a lot of our elders like to take it as, where it's like, oh, y'all just don't have work ethic.
Yeah.
No, ma'am.
Yeah.
I work all the time.
Yeah.
You get these 80 hours out of me. All I'm saying is that I'm no longer allowing you to do so without reciprocating with either time off, extra pay. What does this look like?
Yeah.
I won't allow the abuse.
Yeah.
This can't be an abusive relationship anymore. This can only be a respected relationship. And sometimes you're going to need me on crazy hours or weekends or nights or whatever that looks like. And I'm willing to put in that time as long as you are willing to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
So I guess that's one of my main lessons, but obviously it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
What was it for you?
I think I definitely learned the same thing. I think so. What was it? The summer of 2021 was probably the worst. I was in the worst job that I think I've ever had, and in the worst experience with like a bad situation, a bad boss, top that like was at the top that like felt like it just went down, and then I had like I worked under two people, and so like one of them was like not doing so great, but it was because of the head boss. The other one, she was just not great at being a boss. And so it ended up being a really horrible time. And I think I took my biggest lesson from that. And it was kind of the same thing. I learned how to like respect myself. I learned what my boundaries were and what my limits were. But I think I also learned that being overworked, being traumatized at work looks different on everybody. And my experiences from that summer were valid. And just because I was comparing my experiences to other people's experiences who also worked in that company who seemed like they had it so much worse. And if I was doing okay, then I wasn't like being traumatized as much as them, or it really wasn't bad, or I was overthinking or overreacting. And I think I learned that no, everybody looks different, and everybody's trauma and everybody's definition of being overworked looks different, and my experiences are valid. Yeah. And I can own that, and I can work through that, and I can feel that, and it be okay. And I don't have to compare myself, and I don't have to think, oh, well, just because like I wasn't like in this big scandal or doing this or not doing that, or like it looks like this person was like having such a worse time, does not mean that I wasn't also
Having a rough time.
Yeah, having a rough time, somehow being traumatized in this job or being used or manipulated in this job just because I thought it looked less than the people next to me.
100%.
Yeah.
It's also like we have to remember that not everyone's going to speak up.
Yeah.
There are some people that will hold all of their trauma quiet
Mhm.
because they weren't allowed validating spaces before,
Yeah.
and they will just leave.
That was me.
They will route. Yeah.
That was.
And it's like sometimes still a hope and a prayer.
Mhm.
I really wish leaders would pay attention more to the squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
Like sometimes the person who's speaking up, even if the whole chorus doesn't join in, they're speaking up because like there is an actual issue.
Yeah.
And it's affecting a lot more people.
Than
But
just them.
if
Yeah.
you're not listening seriously and intently, not like the, oh, could you please just shush, but like,
Yeah.
all right, let's find
Right.
something tangible here. That's when you lose everyone else.
Yeah.
That's when things fall apart.
Yeah.
And you might just need to take a few steps back and like build from the foundation up.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, I think I'm always giving the benefit of the doubt.
Mhm.
And I know you do this. There's a lot of people that do, but there's also a lot of people that are stopping this where
Yeah.
it's like, oh, that manager's fine, or it's okay, or
Yeah.
they just misread me today. Like they're not trying to come for me.
Yeah.
They're good. And always extending that grace.
Yeah.
With grace here. But like always extending that grace when sometimes it's not that it's not deserved, it's just misplaced right now.
Mhm.
That person is not necessarily a trash person,
No.
but they are trash at what they're doing. Their
Yep.
behavior needs to be trashed.
Yes.
So you can't always assume because you give the grace, they're taking that as grace.
Yeah.
They're taking it as an assumption. Like, obviously, I'm your boss. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to do what I want to do. You need to just deal. And there's an understanding that, like, if you're just listening a little bit more to that person, if I just wish leaders would just listen a little bit more sometimes, it would benefit the whole company.
Absolutely.
I've seen it up close numerous times, never just one occasion where something that went super wrong could have been fixed a while ago.
Yeah.
It could have been fixed the first time it was brought up. And
it could have been fixed with like a conversation. I feel like people think that like, oh, it's going to take money and resources and all these things to fix things. It's like, no, if you just like had listened and talked, it would have been resolved.
And with listening ears.
Yeah.
Because there are some managers that really refuse to listen to any sort of criticism from someone that works under them.
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm trying to correct you or put you in your place. It's like, hey, I have something that would benefit us all. Would you be willing to talk about this?
Yeah.
Because even the fact that I respect all the experience you have in this space, maybe respect the fact that you hired me because I have some experience to bring to the table. You know, something to assist, help, not just take orders. And I guess for me, the goal now is to figure out how we can help those spaces. Because I didn't feel like I helped those spaces in HR.
Okay.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I was in those spaces just enough to advocate and then still be let go because now I was the squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
Or I was in those spaces long enough to help make change in certain spheres or help create documentation or be an advocate in a specific moment. But something would always come up where I felt like I could do more outside of the space.
Yeah.
So I still love HR. I still love being able to like help put things in order for people. And I feel like you could say the same thing about theater. You still love theater.
I still love
the
it.
Drama, the fabric, the clothes. I love it.
The experience,
But I don't think it's just going to take one person.
No.
But if there was anything you could say that you think would help make a difference, obviously listening, but
Yeah. I feel like listening would be like the number one
yeah.
thing.
Conversations like this.
Yeah.
Over tequila.
Yeah,
Over tea.
absolutely. I feel like just having conversations and bringing people into the room and bringing people from every level into the room.
Yeah.
It's like, because I feel like some places are having these conversations, but it's like, are you bringing from the top to the bottom into that conversation? Because
Yeah.
like the lowest person on the totem pole still has a say and probably knows more than everybody else. Like
Yeah.
I can remember like being the assistant stage manager or being the intern. It's like, well, nobody ever remembers that I'm there, so I get to hear and see a lot, and so I have a lot that I could say. And if you would just bring that person in, and then the next person up, and the next person up, and have all of them come together and be able to like have a respectful conversation.
It's the respect part.
Yeah.
Because if any one of those people assume that they're the smartest person in the room, it's already ruined.
Yeah. Or if you like, I'm bringing you in because it's a courtesy thing, but I'm still the boss and I'm still going to make the final decision. So like, am I really listening to you? No, but I want to put on the good face and I want to say that I did this, but I didn't really listen to you, because I feel like that happens, especially in theater, especially when you have like a really like rich artistic director who's making a lot of money and can make all of these decisions. He'll bring in all the other people, but it's like, you're not listening because you know that like you have the money and the power to make any decision anyway, and you're just doing
no matter
it because
how it affects anyone else.
No, yeah. And you're just doing it because you want to be able to say it to the press or say it to your other colleagues, be like, oh look, well I had these conversations, but I'm still making that decision.
That sounds like an integrity issue.
Yeah.
Because what can you do? Like, for example, I hope to be one of those people eventually that has enough money and power to make change in the lives of anyone who's working with me or around me. Great. But I desire to set up ways to hold myself accountable.
Yeah.
To say like, hey, you have on blinders. You need to get rid of those. You need to be paying attention. You need to be listening. And I could say, great, raise up a generation to be more versed in that, to be more accessible, to be more listening. But is there space for us? That's the caveat.
Thing,
It's like, but do we actually hope that that's a future we can get to, or is it like 100 years out? Like, what's up? So I think the last part I'd want to talk on is specifically, what's your experience as a woman in the workplace? Because both of us are women here, so I apologize to the audience, any of the males or men or anyone who identifies that way, to feel discounted. But there are definitely times where I have experienced comments, conversations, discounting just because of the way I look, or because I carry certain body parts, and anyway. How was that?
How is it? What's it like being a woman? Well,
kind of mostly like to voice the issues that women deal with in the spaces, because of course everyone's like, oh, the Me Too movement, all these things. We can talk about it forever and ever in a day, but the reason why we're still talking about it is because we're still dealing with it. So what was that like for you?
Well, I feel like it was hard. I feel like any woman, it was just hard to be a woman in a man's world. I think I realized as I was, once I like got out of college and was really working for theaters, I realized how much like there are great and wonderful women in theater and in the arts industry, but a lot of those top positions, a lot of the board positions are still held by men, specifically white men. And so it was like, okay, like I have these great women that I'm directly working with, and it was wonderful, but that's where it stopped. And it was like, well, I feel like I can't move up. I feel like I can't go to this person because he wasn't going to take me seriously. He was just, I'm being over dramatic, or I'm being emotional, or I don't have enough experience, or like because of my gender and who I was. And even like when your age comes into it, because I feel like I always have dealt with that. And I look young too. Like I've always had people say that like I look not my age. And I feel like that always hinders me, because it's like, oh, well, you're just young, or you don't understand because like this was before your time, or
No, I have the same brain cells you do.
yeah.
Could you respect me as if I have brain
Yeah.
cells? You hired me, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm an affirmative
Mm,
action
you-
hire. Got it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what's this
That's-
really?
yeah.
But no, I get what you're saying. To be quite blunt, I was very sick and tired of working in some spaces where you deal with the sexual harassment
Mhm.
because there are men in the space that assume they can still make comments about your body, or
Yeah.
oh, you're not getting enough dates because you're intimidating.
Yeah.
You should chill. Like,
Gross.
how is that any of your business?
Yeah.
We're not even talking about that. To working for women who I thought that I could come to them and talk to them,
Mm.
but somehow, some way, they were scarred enough to feel as though they could be the only woman in that space.
Yeah.
To working for men who I might have considered somewhat more on my level, someone who
Yeah.
might even fit into the LGBTQIA plus column, and just like we've had connections as good friends or such like that, and then there's always kind of a disconnect on our experiences.
Yeah.
And I find I think I'm just hopeful that one day we'll get to a spot where we'll stop discounting each other
Yeah.
for the dumbest things. Not even my gender, not
Mhm.
my race, not how I look, not because you think I'm more aesthetically pleasing or
Mhm.
less, whatever. But just coming to a spot where we can respect that the person across from you has experience,
Yeah.
has talent, and was brought into the space for those reasons. Can you listen to them for those reasons?
Yeah.
So,
Same. What? Yeah.
any final thoughts?
I so agree with your last thought. I like wish and hope and pray for the same thing, that
Yeah.
we can just respect each other and listen and learn from each other and be willing to learn. Like I love learning. So like I always want to learn from somebody, and I
Yeah.
just wish that the workforce, no matter who you are, can just become more open to knowing that like you don't know everything, nor are you the best at everything. So
Facts.
just
That's why you need these people.
Yeah. That's why you need so many people, and you need so many diverse people and different people. And if
Yeah.
you would just stop for a second, stop thinking of yourself and just listen, what a world we could create.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, I think I'll end it there. It's just obviously one of those topics where we're not going to come to some
No.
world peace solution overnight.
Nope.
But I just hope any leaders out there or expecting to be leaders in the workspace, if you can hear from us without it being too messy, just take into account to take a pause, stop, listen to the people that work with you or under you, and not in a way where it's going to be like defensive or you feel like you need to be the boss. Honestly, real facts.
Yep.
Everyone that I've ever heard tell me they were my boss has been horrible. Not a manager, not a leader. No.
I'm your boss.
That exact word. If you find yourself using that word too much, I'm looking at you. But, yeah, just try to take into account for yourself a level of accountability to address people as the human that they are, and see if you can find your weak points and fill them. We don't expect you to be anything more or less than human, so maybe some of that back and forth, you'll actually start to see your business grow, or you'll start to see your team develop in a certain way just because you took a few steps back, didn't let your ego drive, but you really decided to say, like, what do we need in order to grow and thrive? So hopefully that helps. Yeah.
Amen.
Thanks, Grace.
Thank you.
Thanks for the little bit of chaos.
Yes.
I think it was fun, especially a good break in topics. Lately, we've been talking about a lot of grief, death, life, blah. So I really appreciate this.
Thank you. I loved being here.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Well, saying to all of you, cheers to your journey as well as mine, because I'll be taking my tea one sip at a time.